I do believe that humanity has reached a crossroad, and I hate to exaggerate that. I don't want it to sound sensational, but I think it's true. I think our species, the species of human beings, is coming to a place where we are deciding about ourselves. We are making a huge decision about who are we, who do we really choose to be. Who are we? Who do we really choose to be? Who are we? Who do we really choose to be? We imagine that the issue is a political issue. Then we say, well, it must be a financial problem. The problem is not political, it's not financial, and it's also, by the way, not military, obviously.
Circumstances don't determine who you are, they reveal who you are. And the world that we live in now, the circumstances are changing so rapidly that we're being revealed.
There's no such thing as a problem. A problem is essentially a transition. So I see the crises of today as a transition point for humanity.
Look down on the human drama and discern through your critical faculties what's going on without judging it. Just discern, what is this human drama about right now, and what role can I best play in it?
The latest Global Risks Report published by the World Economic Forum presents an astonishing risks interconnection map. It clearly reveals how all global risks are interrelated and interwoven, so that economic, environmental, geopolitical, social, and technological risks are hugely interdependent. A crisis in one area will quickly lead to a crisis in other areas. The interconnection and complexity in this map, compared to our surprise at the impact and speed of the recent financial crises, illustrates the discord that exists between all systems we've built and shows just how disconnected we've become. Our attempts at managing these systems are fragmented and simplistic, and not up to the challenges that we face today.
The way we use natural resources is based on our economic system, which is closely related to our social values, which directly affect our psychological and emotional systems and all our actions. What we see in the world is a reflection of who we are. You cannot separate what's happening in the world and what's happening within people. So we're not just in crisis in politics or in economics. Human beings are now in crisis with themselves.
When I studied biocybernetics, it was a wonder to see that the more we delve into nature, the animal kingdom, plant life, ecosystems, we see that everything is interconnected through reciprocal actions, some of which we understand, some of which we still don't. But now, human society is also becoming so integrated that it's like a single closed system that encompasses the entire globe. The crisis we're facing now is actually very unique. We are all closed together in the same system, and we can no longer do whatever we want in it. World leaders, presidents, have lost the ability to manage the people. It's as though the world began to move without any reins, but rather according to a new law of interdependence, of connection, the law that is characteristic of integral systems. And here we see that world leaders, first of all, they can't even make decisions, whether it's G8 or G20. And even if they arrive at something, they can't realize it.
In science, we started as Newtonian physicists, and we started pretending like we are machines. That was the worldview for some time. That changed with biologists coming along. Biology gives a different view of the human being altogether. Biology says that, well, we are machines, but we are machines with competition, with survival in mind. And we fight for our survival, we compete. So our higher values are important only if they are important for survival. Outside of survival, there is no other impetus to the human being. And because of this idea, we have become, as you know, extremely competitive in our society. If somebody else has something, I must get it. If somebody else doesn't have it yet, I must get it before he or she gets it. And this idea is causing havoc in our society.
Much of our progress in human civilization has been driven by egoistic competition. People try to outdo each other, and that creates better science, better technology, etc. However, now we're at a point where this ego drive has become so extreme that it will stop at nothing in order to be more or have more than others. And so companies are destroying the ecosystem, bankers are creating economic crisis, people are building themselves on the ruin of others.
Our food supplies are increasingly at risk, water resources are increasingly being strained, and our financial systems continue to be highly volatile and risky. At the same time, we're also discovering how all our systems are connected and interdependent. Clearly, business as usual is a dead end.
In the previous days and times, we've been involved, not exclusively, but largely, in the process of individual survival. How do I get through the day? How do I get through the week? How do I get through the month? In the 21st century, we're learning now that we can no longer concentrate on individual survival strategies, that unless we begin to coalesce those strategies and learn how we can survive collectively, that no individual is going to survive in the long run. Again, I don't want to be an alarmist, but I realize that we are facing a very critical time now. The separation theology that humanity has established through the years has created a separation cosmology. That is a cosmological way of looking at things that says everything is separate from everything else. And a separation cosmology has produced a separation sociology. That is a way of socializing with each other that says, I'm over here and you're over there, and our interests will not meet unless they do. If they do, we'll try to cooperate, but if our interests do not meet, if we have separate interests, I may just have to harm you. I may, in fact, just have to kill you.
There's an old story, the grandfather who's speaking to his grandson in the lodge, and the grandson comes in and says, I had a dream last night. In the dream, there were two wolves inside fighting, and one was a black wolf and one was a white wolf. And the black wolf scared me, grandfather, and the white wolf made me feel hopeful. Which one will survive? And the grandfather said, the one you feed the most. And so to me, that is the nature of humanity, the nature of humans, is we have both. Which one we're going to feed the most is the one we're going to see in the world.
The Ash experiment is one of psychology's oldest and most popular pieces of research. A volunteer is told that he's taking part in a visual perception test. What he doesn't know is that the other participants are actors, and he's the only person taking part in the real test, which is actually about group conformity.
Please begin. The experiment you will be taking part in today involves the perception of line length. Your task will be simply to look at the line here on the left and indicate which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. So, for example, if you...
The actors have been told to match the wrong lines. The volunteer will be monitored to see if he gives the correct answer or if he goes along with the opinion of the group and gives the wrong answer. In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1. 1.
2.
1. Once again, the correct answer is 2.
3.
3. 3.
3.
3.
The Ash conformity experiment has been repeated many times. It's been suggested that, first, the distortion happens at the level of action. The subject believes the others are wrong, yet goes along with them anyway. Then it happens at the level of judgment. The subject begins to think, maybe they're seeing something I'm not seeing. And then it happens at the level of perception, which means that the subject's actual perception of what's right or wrong is distorted by the majority. Now, when you link these conclusions to what's happening in the world today, you have to ask, in what way have we been using the influence of society? Which is probably the most powerful force in human psychology.
Over 40 years ago, I was cloning stem cells, and one of the first experiments just so blew my mind that it really changed the whole course of my education and my life. I put one stem cell in a culture dish all by itself, and that stem cell divides every 10 to 12 hours. After about a week to 10 days, I have thousands of cells in the petri dish, but what's most important is all these cells are genetically identical to each other. And then what I did, and this is the experiment, I separated a culture of genetically identical cells into 3 different petri dishes, and I changed the environment. But the culture medium to cells is like the world that we live in. It's got the air, the water, the food, all the things in it. So I had 3 different environments, yet genetically identical cells in each dish, and the results revealed that in environment A, the cells form muscle, in environment B, the cells form bone, and in environment C, the cells form fat cells. What was so profoundly important about this is if you ask the question, what is responsible for controlling the fate of the cells? What the experiment clearly revealed was that all the cells were genetically identical. The only thing that was different from one dish to the other dish was the environment. So while at the time I was teaching medical students the conventional story out of the textbook, the concept of genetic determinism, that genes control our fate and our lives, my experiments revealed a completely different story, and that was, it was the environment that was primarily responsible in shaping the behavior and genetics.
And there's new research out of Harvard Medical School about social contagion. And I think it's kind of obvious and intuitive that you catch the moods of people around you, but now they're finding that people get fat in groups, they get happy in groups, they quit smoking in groups.
Nicholas Christakis and I have been very fortunate to find a resource in the Framingham Heart Study that we never imagined we could find. They were asking people for 32 years, who are your family members? Where do you work? Where do you live? And most importantly, who are your friends? For the first time, now that we have data like this, we are able to get a bird's eye view of networks like the networks that you live in.
We had some validated measures of various emotions, including happiness. And what we attempted to show, and were able to show, is that my happiness depends not just on my own actions and thoughts and behaviors, but also on the actions and thoughts and behaviors of the people to whom I'm directly connected, my friends, siblings, spouses, neighbors, coworkers, and so forth, and the people to whom they are connected, and the people even to whom they are connected.
And what this finding is showing us is that it's not just behaviors that are spreading through networks, it's also these emotional states that are spreading through networks. So we think that what's spreading is this tendency to transmit ideas, these norms of behavior.
You are, in fact, a social organism. You're created by your environment. There's no you and there's no me. Once you begin to think about how everything you do has been taught to you one way or another, granted, you're putting things together and you're making decisions, but your decisions are limited to the information that's been given to you and that you've learned. So I'm a walking amalgam of a social engineering, so to speak. If I see myself as separate from everything else, that I could say is incorrect. For example, everyone knows they have to breathe. Through time, people will begin to understand that their integrity is only as good as the integrity of everything else around them.
So what is happening in science is really quite pathetic, and what is happening in the public at large is also equally pathetic, because what is happening is that by pretending to be something, we are becoming that something. By pretending to be something, we are becoming that something. By pretending to be something, we are becoming that something. By pretending that we are mindless matter, we are just material and that's it, we are excluding the finer aspects of life. We are excluding the finer aspects of our experience. And this is very serious business.
If you take Darwinian theory, which says that we're in a competition and we have to compare each other as to where we fit, and you mix that with a Newtonian vision from physics that the primacy of the universe is found in the physical structure. And then you put those two together and you say, well, how do you know where you fit in the Darwinian world? And the answer is, how much material do you own? And so, evolution of humanity since Newtonian times was to extract the material from the planet so that we could have possessions. And that the possessions then were a reflection of where we stand in the hierarchy. If you're very low in the hierarchy of human life, you have nothing. If you're very high in the hierarchy of human life, you have money and possessions and houses and toys and all these things. So then you say, well, then who suffers from all this? Well, there's great suffering at every level, whether suffering in the physical planet or in the human civilization, there's suffering all over. In order for me as a human to prove my hierarchy, I have to extract the material from the planet. So what do? I mine the planet. I rape the planet of all of its possessions so that I can hold in my hand this chunk of gold and say, see how much I am worth, where is your gold? Theory of evolution is not based on community, but based on the individual. Newtonian physics said it's only the visible things that are relevant. But in a world based on quantum physics, which is based on energy, some of the things that we understand in the nature of energy are emotions and feelings, such as love and beauty. These are expressions of energy. And in a world of quantum physics, we surely emphasize more the nature of love and feelings and energy and beauty and harmony over the money and the material expressions that we look at today. And why is this important? Because then you look at the world and you say, do you want a pound of gold, or do you want to be totally in love in your life?
This is a painting known as the Supper at Emmaus. And in the 1940s, when it was thought to be painted by Johann Vermeer, it was worth millions of dollars. It was perhaps literally priceless. It was in Holland, and it was one of the most renowned paintings in Europe. People would travel through Europe to see it. Until one terrible day when it was discovered that it was not painted by Vermeer at all, but by the great forger, Van Meegeren. In other words, it was discovered it was not this painting, but that painting. And all of a sudden, its value dropped to nothing. How you taste something is critically affected by what you believe you're eating. And this shows up in all sorts of ways. One nice finding involves children. How do you get children not just to eat their carrots and drink milk, but after they have the carrots and milk, to report that they tasted good, better than your normal carrot, better than your normal glass of milk? It's actually terribly simple to do this. This was done in a study a couple of years ago. You take them out from a McDonald's bag. They get people into a brain scanner, and as they're lying on their back, there's a tube going into their mouth, and they get to drink wine through the tube while their brains are being scanned. Above them is a screen where they can read information about the wine that they're drinking. Everybody drinks the same wine. If they think they're drinking the cheap stuff, they'll report, it doesn't taste so good, and they have a low-level neural response. If they think they're drinking 200 out of a $200 bottle, they say they love it, and the pleasure centers of their brain light up like a Christmas tree. This is John Cage's work. It comes under different names, but it's often called 4 minutes, 33 seconds, because it was a famous modern performance where the pianist is instructed to sit at the piano and be silent for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Now, as you can imagine, this is fairly controversial, whether or not this is brilliant or just ridiculous. But my favorite fact about this is you can go onto iTunes and you can buy for $1.99 the entire thing of 4 minutes, 33 seconds, which is, of course, silent. And I've read commentaries on this where people are outraged. They say, look, just turn down the volume of your computer and sit there for 4 minutes, 33 seconds. But psychologically, I think that wouldn't be the same silence. This is that silence from that performance.
You know, it's astonishing to me that we don't realize we make this all up. We made the whole thing up. You know why gold is what the value it is? Because somebody said so. That's it. You know why the fuel costs what it is? Because somebody said so. Somebody speculates, somebody decides, there's a belief, enough people join in, this is what a thing costs. We've all decided this. So an awakening of, we're repeating these cycles and we're getting kind of tired of it, maybe we should do something different this time around, be something different.
People are interested in processing meaning and values. We have to hear that. It's the society, the media especially, that puts ordinary people into this vain search of material goodies. Yeah.
The average U.S. person now consumes twice as much as they did 50 years ago. Ask your grandma. In her day, stewardship and resourcefulness and thrift were valued. So how did this happen? Shortly after World War II, these guys were figuring out how to ramp up the economy. Retailing analyst Victor Lebeau articulated the solution that's become the norm for the whole system. He said, our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction in consumption. We need things consumed, burned up, replaced, and discarded at an ever-accelerating rate. Advertisements and media in general plays a big role in this. Each of us in the U.S. is targeted with over 3,000 advertisements a day. We see more advertisements in 1 year than people 50 years ago saw in a lifetime. And if you think about it, what's the point of an ad except to make us unhappy with what we have? So 3,000 times a day, we're told our hair is wrong, our skin is wrong, our clothes are wrong, our furniture is wrong, our car is wrong. We are wrong, but it can all be made right if we just go shopping.
Mr. Rogers, who was the TV guy here in the United States, said the space between the television and the viewer should be sacred. comes down to money. If they can sell it, if it helps humanity, I don't believe that the make or break point for anything that's done in the media, for the most part, 99%, is about the influence on the consumer. It's about, can we sell it? And if they could sell it and it's good for you, they'll sell it. But if they sell it and it's not good for you, they'll sell it anyway. In my world, I think that matters greatly on the impact of the listener because it changes their lives one way or the other.
Part of the problem is people are too focused on their own little world, their own little lives, what it is they want to accomplish, when in fact there's really nothing you can accomplish that feels quite as happy as doing it with other people. And so I think there's been too much of the entrepreneurial greed, me focus in the last few decades. And I do think that people have become aware that we're becoming more unhappy, not just in the United States, but all over the world. Depression rates are rising faster. I don't know that people are always aware of it until you ask powerful questions. The research is so interesting on this that if you ask college students what they aspire to, they talk about money. But if you ask them what the best thing was that happened to them in the last month, they mention experiences with other people. They never mention possessions. So on an intuitive level, people do understand what it is that brings them joy, but sometimes they have to find out the hard way.
So we're in this ridiculous situation where we go to work, maybe 2 jobs even, and we come home and we're exhausted, so we plop down on our new couch and watch TV, and the commercials tell us you suck, so you gotta go to the mall to buy something to feel better, and then you gotta go to work more to pay for the stuff you just bought, so you come home and you're more tired, so you sit down and you watch more TV, and it tells you to go to the mall again, and we're on this crazy work, watch, spend treadmill, and we could just stop.
I had a question, and the question was, how much did you cut them by?
We have actually produced more oil.
No. How much did you cut licenses and permits on federal land?
We must change with it.
Well, the change of man is the key to changing everything else in the world. Without it, nothing real significant will change. What we need is not just patching up, not just solutions to current problems. What we need is a transformation, a fundamental transformation, which means a change of values, the change of thinking, change of consciousness, change in the way the human being thinks and acts.